Hello, everyone, and we apologize for being a little bit late today. We're going to blame it on technology. As wonderful as it is, sometimes there are little glitches, but thank you so much for joining us. My name is Gordana Mosier, and I'm the Canadian Hard of Hearing Association Manager for Accessibility Projects and Communications. I'd like to welcome you all today on our CHHA Mentoring webinar. There'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions for our guests and our mentors. So if you'd like to share something, we encourage you, please use our chat functionality on the Zoom platform, and our moderator will address all the questions when our speakers finished, and we'll be able to have a Q&A after that. So let's get started. I have the pleasure of introducing CHHA National Mentoring Program Coordinator, Dr. Ruth Warwick, our moderator for today. She is the founding member and former national president of the Canadian Hard of Hearing Association and current president of the Canadian Hard of Hearing Association's British Columbia chapter. Dr. Warwick is the president of the International Federation of Hard of Hearing People and vice president of the International Disability Alliance. Ruth, along with Dr. Marilyn Dahl, spearheaded the CHHA BC Peer Mentoring Program over the past few months. I've had the pleasure of working with Ruth on launching the CHHA National Peer Mentoring Program, which was successfully launched February 1st with the funding from the government's New Horizons program. So thank you so much for joining us today, and just want to let you know that this webinar will be available on our CHHA website where you can access it. And we have a wonderful mentors on board. So I'm going to pass it on to Ruth to take off from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gordana, and hello to everyone. Thank you for joining in on this session. We have the opportunity to share with you our information and our perspectives about mentoring. And mentoring is a word that is in the common vernacular. It's usually associated with someone who has more experience and knowledge, being a person who helps another individual. And through the mentoring program, we're focusing on people who have a hearing loss. And in CHHA, British Columbia, we developed the program about 4 or 5 years ago in order to fill a gap for individuals who are not able to come to a regular meeting and who live in outlying areas. But this can also be even in an urban center where it's very difficult to arrange for transit or childcare or even to go out at night when the meeting is being scheduled. And so this fills a gap, and it also fills a gap for individuals who don't really have anyone to connect to about their hearing loss issues, particularly if they're new. And no one really tells you what it's like to be hard of hearing. And if you have somebody who's already gone through it, who has that experience and can share with you tips or strategies or what they've experienced, that can just make it less of a lonesome journey. So we're going to hear from our 4 panelists today, and each of them are mentors. They are mentors in the national program. So after CHHA BC developed the program in British Columbia, we then were very happy to turn it over to CHHA National to offer it across the country, feeling that we should open it up to all Canadians. And I would like to also say that the mentoring program isn't just for people who are new to having a hearing loss. It's also to individuals who have a long time loss and just want to connect with somebody else about hearing loss issues. There can be enormous benefits to being part of this program. You can extend your personal network. You can reduce your sense of isolation and get support, answers to questions, and feedback about hearing loss issues. And you can have help in setting new goals, building your confidence and self-esteem, and improving your communication skills. So that's just a short list of some of the benefits from being in the program. So with that introduction, I would like to now turn it over to our 4 panelists, and we will be going in order. We have one question already sort of pre-arranged for each panelist. But before I do, I'd like to just quickly introduce all four of them, starting with the West Coast, Gail Hannon, who almost needs no introduction. She's an author, a performer, has been involved in the hearing loss movement for many, many years. And we're very fortunate she's moved to British Columbia from Ontario. So now we get her expertise on the BC chapter. And next to her is Cindy Gordon from Edmonton, also a longtime CHHA member, has been on the CHHA board, is a mainstay for CHHA Edmonton, and has enormous experience with mentoring that she will share with us. And then we go into Ottawa and Gatineau, where Carol Williams lives. And Carol's a former executive director of CHHA. I don't know if many of you know that, and also a former president. And again, a longtime member. And she is currently a special advisor at the international level on hard of hearing issues to the International Federation of Hard of Hearing People. And then we have someone, our lone male from Newfoundland, Leon Mills, who is executive director for the Newfoundland and Labrador CHHA chapter. And Leon has been around at least 30 years, if not more. So we are very fortunate to have this cadre of very experienced persons. And I'm going to start, first of all, by asking Gail, if you can please share with us your experience of being a mentor and the impact you have had with individuals who have connected with you. She's just going to deal with the unmuting challenge. There you are.
I met the challenge. Thanks, Ruth. Being a mentor has been a fabulous experience. And to me, it's an extension of what happens when you belong to CHHA, when you reach out to CHHA, to other people with hearing loss. And what this is a one-on-one that has been extremely rewarding because I've had the honor of being a mentor to sort of a diverse group of people. And what I found overall is that most of them decided to stick with me, it was just a few sessions. Usually they had a specific issue that they wanted to discuss. For example, one person was entering on a possible cochlear implant journey. Someone else had specific communication issues with people in her condo. And others wanted to discuss handling hearing loss in a relationship. I wanted to share one particular experience that I had because she very kindly shared the impact of our relationship, our mentor-mentee relationship. It was someone who had lived with hearing loss for a very long time, but still had difficulty in self-identifying and letting other people know that she had hearing loss. And in her work environment, she kept her hearing loss to herself. And so, as you know, she would struggle. And so we met several times, and she came back in one session and said, I did it. I was able to be open with them, and oh my goodness, it just changed everything. There was no issue. So I was very honored to be able to experience that impact that our discussions, our confidential discussions led to that place for her. And so I guess that really sum it up. Sometimes you don't have that chance to see where your support went, but in this case I did, and it was an honor.
Thank you very much, Gail. That's great. Cindy, this past year has been very challenging for so many of us. What advice or support would you recommend when it comes to self-care, especially for individuals with hearing loss?
Okay, well, yes, this has been a challenging year, to say the least. But again, connecting is more important than ever because we are so isolated right now. We are cut off by communication with the masks. So it's even more important to try and reach out. So this mentorship program is perfect timing, because this is so important to be able to reach out to other people, to ask them the questions instead of staying home, wondering what you should be doing, feeling lonely, not being able to talk out the concerns. So I guess my biggest thing would just be say, we have to reach out, connect with your local branch. I know most branches are still running programs to the best of their ability. They're still there, they're still answering their phones. So reach out.
Thank you so much, Cindy. That's really a great message. Reach out. And now, Leon, you have in the past shared with us how important it is to advocate for oneself. Can you share your experience and advice for individuals who may struggle when it comes to advocating for themselves? And remember to unmute yourself, please.
Sorry, I think you know that by now. Anyway, thank you, Ruth, and my apologies for that. Hello, everyone. Great to be here with you all today, and hopefully we'll share some insights that'll be helpful for you. Yeah, I mean, when I don't know if I've ever had a trouble being a self-advocate for myself in any way, shape, or form, either being before hearing loss or after. But maybe that was a good thing when I did get hearing loss, because I lost my hearing when I was 28. But I guess the wake-up call for me in terms of but really understanding about being a self-advocate happened when I did lose my hearing when I was 28, and then applying for work after in my 30s when I had to give up my teaching career, and I came face on with having to face discrimination because of my hearing loss, and that was something I hadn't ever dealt with before, and so you need to work. And so it sort of was an eye-opener for me, but also it made me realize that, if I don't stand up and fight for myself, then it's going to be hard to get other people to do it for me, and especially when it comes to hearing loss, because I quickly realized too that hearing loss, being one of those invisible disabilities, wasn't considered, at least here in Newfoundland, not like a mainstream disability, like mobility issues and different things. So it didn't get much attention that it deserved, and there weren't a lot of people around to sort of help you out. And well, anyway, a lot of it I did on my own. A lot of it I did with help from CHHA and Nell. And but I guess there's some basic, simple steps to think about when you become the self-advocate. And first, most important piece of information, I guess, is to believe in yourself. And what what your rights are in terms of what you're trying to fight for and the issue you're trying to resolve. And so you need to educate yourself, and find out exactly what's going on with the whole thing. But most important is believing in yourself and believing that you're worthy of respect and that you should be listened to. So the biggest challenge is making that first time, I think, for a lot of people, is overcoming that initial, challenge of standing up for yourself and speaking to somebody who's not agreeing with you about something when you're in the right. So, believe in yourself, know your rights, educate yourself, get the facts as much as you can, and then you plan a strategy how you're going to go about, resolving your issue, and then, look for other means of support. In my case, it was CHHA and L, and things like that. Those are some of the key things I think that you can do. But the most important thing is believing in yourself, I think, and taking that first step. And after that, you'll find that the subsequent challenges you have will be a lot easier to deal with.
Thank you so much, Leon. That's a great message. Believe in oneself. And Cindy has mentioned already about the challenges during this pandemic period. Carol, what would you recommend to keep well mentally, given these challenges that are compounded by having a hearing loss?
Well, certainly in the time of COVID, we're dealing with that social isolation, having to communicate with people who are wearing masks. And also even just the fear that everybody has about their own health and that of their loved ones. So I'm an optimistic person, but it's hard to stay optimistic in these times. So I say to myself that the best medicine to deal with this is to focus on what is going well, and also to identify what is not going well and finding practical solutions for those things. In other words, it's about adaptability. Sure, we don't really want the situation that we are all in right now, but it's about taking care of ourselves and finding ways to deal with them. Uh, you know, I mean, of course, everybody knows about how much we use Zoom and the other technologies more. But sometimes some people don't even have that ability. I have a friend of mine who doesn't even have a computer. So how does she reach out to people? Well, I said, why don't we do something extraordinary? Because I can't pick up the phone and talk to him validly. So I said, well, let's start with letter writing. And so sometimes you just have to go back to the old basics too. As long as you're being authentic in your communications and finding ways to reach out to others, you're also helping yourself when you do that. And I think that's really, really important thing, that to take care of others is also a way to take care of ourselves, especially in these times of social isolation. I like to think that around the world, this situation is happening and is helping to bring all of humanity back together. So that helped me to find that optimism again. Thank you. That's what I wanted to say.
A great message, Carol. And what role do you think that the mentoring program would play in helping one deal with this isolation that can be experienced during COVID?
Well, it's been a natural way for some people to connect. And I think it's fascinating because with hearing loss, we're so isolated generally without the problem of COVID. And so the mentoring is just a natural way to be able to meet new people. And that's fantastic because it's hard to meet new people right now. And for me, I have 4 people that I'm mentoring, and I'm learning from them too. So it's also that human connection that we all need. And I really, really think that is fascinating that the mentoring program gives us the opportunity to do that as mentors and as mentees.
Connecting through the mentoring program, just to summarize, if anyone is interested in becoming a mentee, as Gail has said earlier, some of the relationships are very short term. So you don't have to feel that you're making a long-term commitment unless you want to. So really, anyone can sign up for the program for as long as they want to be a mentee. The other thing to be aware of is that the conversations are confidential. They're not being shared with anyone else. So we don't know what you may have had a conversation with someone about, except maybe in broad terms when we're collecting data about the nature of the program. But the very specifics of your situation are not being shared with anyone. And this program, as I mentioned earlier, is for anyone who has a hearing loss. You do not have to be new. You could be somebody who has had it from birth, but you still have some questions, or you just want to connect with someone and share your own expertise as a mentee. So it really is wide open, and anyone from all of the Canada, whatever part, can take part in the program. It is an online program, so you do need to have access to a computer or a smartphone in order to take part, or some kind of device that allows you to receive the internet messages. So hopefully, following this webinar, if you want to sign up, you just have to go to the CHHA national website. It's very clearly stated on the website if you're interested in joining the program. Now we're going to turn to your questions, and we have several questions here. First of all, Leon, you said you had to leave your job in education. Was this because of your hearing loss?
Yes, thank you, Ruth. Thanks for the question. I was a teacher I was late coming to the teaching profession because I worked for 8 years after high school and late going to university. So I never graduated till I was 30. But at the age of 37, I had to give up teaching because my hearing got got worse. I had started to lose my hearing while I was in university at 28. So I had hearing aids, but it was still really difficult for me in a classroom setting because of all the background noise and reverberation. And of course, back then, that was a long time ago, all we had was analog hearing aids. So they just made, the background noise louder. If I had the newer, hearing aids that we have nowadays, which are very technical, much more powerful, much more advanced, and you can do much more fine tuning of the sound. If I had had these then, I expect I would have been able to continue teaching, but unfortunately, I did have to give up my teaching career at age 37, and then while I was at CHHA actually, and the opportunity came up to do some work for them on a project, and so I started on that, and then the year after that, I became the executive director for CHHA Newfoundland. So now this is my 26th year as the executive director. So I sort of came into this job into the back door, I guess, but I think is one of the best things that ever happened to me in that sense, because it's wonderful work and being able to help other people and, share your experiences about life and how you can overcome obstacles. And it's very, I find that's very helpful and nurturing.
Leon, did you have a mentor when you were transitioning to a new career?
Yes, it's sort of, I guess I could say Dr. Nora Brown, some of you may know, some of you do know, I know. She was the founding president of CHHA Newfoundland chapter. And I remember when I first met her, I came down on a Friday afternoon to the CHHA office and at 1 o'clock, and I left at 5 o'clock. And she let me talk for 4 hours to cry out share my fears, have a cry for myself, feel sorry for myself. And then she kicked me in the butt. And she said, one thing she said that stuck with me even to today, and it's my mantra, I guess, in a way. She said, Leon, I know you've been through a lot. And she said, you've had some challenges and you still got some challenges. But in my experience, the best way to help yourself is to help others. So she said, I encourage you to become a volunteer with our association. And you might find that that'll take you in directions that you never know where it'll go. So that was amazing. What she said to me then, I'd never forgotten it, and it served me well. And I guess it's the best advice I can impart to people these days is that, like Carol said, help yourself, help others, help others by helping yourself. And it's very true, because you focus on the positive and let the negative is going to be there in one way or another all our lives. And so you just sort of try to minimize that and focus on the positive and work your way forward from there. So that's Dr. Brown's, and she gave me lots of other good advice over the years too, and shared her knowledge and information, but she's helped make me what I am today, I think. And so she was certainly a very powerful mentor for me.
You certainly live up to her expectations of helping others, as have all of our mentors. Gail, or any of the other mentors, what challenges have you had and overcome that you think would help someone struggling with either their hearing loss or navigating access? Yes, I'll repeat the question. I can lip read you, Gail. What challenge have you had and overcome that you think would help someone struggling with either their hearing loss or navigating access?
To me, what I had to overcome was that when I first connected with other people with hearing loss, I had to overcome an attitude about myself that I didn't know that I carried. Growing up with hearing loss as an adult, I somehow felt I was lesser than. And it was sort of the burden that I carried for years without knowing it. And when I connected, the moment I connected at a CHHA conference, that burden disappeared. And that I realized I wasn't lesser than. I had hearing loss. That's my issue. It doesn't mean that I'm a lesser person. And that knowledge, when it came, gave me the ability to step forward and to learn about how all the other strategies, all the other tools that were available to me to help deal better with my hearing loss. So I guess it narrows down to taking that first step and to realizing that you, as a person with hearing loss, deserve to hear and you deserve to be heard. And when you can start to believe that message and not pay lip service to it, things will change. They did for me.
I think that what you felt is probably what all of us have felt at a point in time, where somehow my disability isn't as great as someone else's. It's not as serious, it doesn't require as much attention, or I don't want to bother those other people with my needs and cause them extra work or extra effort. I'm sure that I certainly know that I've gone through that period, and I still do at times. So I still have to remind myself, hey, I'm entitled to this, and I need to be able to hear. And when I don't hear, to be able to address it. I wonder if Cindy or Carol want to comment further about that issue.
Well, I really want to say one of the things that I really believe what Gail just said. I lived that for sure. And for me, my aha moment was going to the first CHHA conference, or Canadian Hard of Hearing conference. Sorry about my 4-year-old grandson. So going to my first Canadian Hard of Hearing conference was like, oh my God, I'm not the only person who's hard of hearing in the world. That was something for me, and I was all by myself before that.
Carol did forewarn us she has to babysit her 4-year-old grandson at the same time as being on this call. Thank you for navigating that. Cindy, do you have some advice for people who have to struggle with really coming to terms with the identity of having a hearing loss and being forward about it in order to get their needs met?
I think we all go through this. Every person who has hearing loss has these exact same feelings. Their self-worth, they're questionable, and learning to speak up for it is a big process. So when you can find somebody, and the conferences, you both said it, conferences are what changed us all, I think. When you meet somebody else who has it, you're not alone, and you see what they've gone through, it changes your whole life. Dr. Brown was one of the first people I also met at a conference, and she used those same words on me, Leon, like get on with things, and the best way to do it is to help somebody else. But the way you help is how you learn first and what you learn from someone else, and then you give it back, and we just keep growing. We just keep growing when we do this. I still look forward to every conference for those exact same reasons, the validation, just the extra, seeing all these old friends of ours. And so again, it's just, we all go through this, but we can all get through it with the help of each other.
Leon, yes, you go ahead and jump in here, Leon.
Yeah, I just wanted to add what the other mentor said. You know, when it comes to hearing loss, and for me, the same thing. I mean, when I went to my first CHHA conference, it was absolutely amazing experience. And I guess best way I can sum it up is that I felt like I had come home, because I had, you know, I was in a room with a bunch of people that were just like me in some ways, but we're all unique in our own hearing loss and our ability and how we live with it. But we all had that commonality, and that was the first time in my life, you know, since I had my hearing loss, that I actually felt safe, protected, accepted, and you know, equal sort of to others, I guess, in some ways. So, but that was a real eye-opener, aha moment for me. And I guess in terms of how people respond to hearing loss, and what I found over the years in terms of dealing with so many people, clients here at our office, is that hearing loss, as we all know, is a very unique experience. How people cope with it is very unique. For some people, it's a minor issue that they just take in stride. It's no big deal. For other people, the slightest hearing loss is completely devastating for them. So, and how everybody responds to it is, you know, is depends on your own background, your own knowledge, your own experience, life experience, and all those kinds of things. So, but my advice is to, regardless of how it respects you and how you respond to it, don't let it control you. You must learn to control it. And while it will present limitations in your daily life, it doesn't have to mean, you know, it controls your daily life. So just make sure you do what you can to understand it, educate it, know it, own it, live with it, and just do the best you can, and don't beat yourself up about it, you know.
Thank you. Gail, over to you.
We've been talking about the benefits about meeting other people with hearing loss, and what the mentoring program does, it allows you to meet just one other person, because you might want that for a variety of reasons. But the benefit of being entering into this type of relationship is that the mentor will listen to you. This is one of our key roles as a mentor. So many people with hearing loss have no one to talk to about it. Their family don't want to talk about it. They're tired of it. And you've got all these feelings and emotion, and your mentor is here to listen to you. Offer advice if you ask for it, share experiences. But this is something, you're not lost in a crowd, because it's just you and your mentor. And the feedback that I've had from the mentees that I've worked with is that on different levels, they appreciate the experience. For some, it was more successful. Sometimes they got their questions answered, but they all appreciated someone listening to them.
Thank you for pointing out that key aspect of the program is that the mentors are here to listen to you. And at the same time, they have a wealth of experience that they're willing to share with you. So I have a question for you, Cindy, come in, and that says, the challenge of the pandemic has made it very difficult to connect with people, with family members, even services. What advice would you be able to provide those seeking support?
Well, this definitely has been a challenge with family members, my own, not being able to see them and connect with them the way we usually can. But you know what? We do the outdoor event. Do what you can. We get outside. It's further away than we're used to being when we communicate, but do the best you can with that. Get out there, meet with them. Masks can change. We all know about these beautiful clear masks. Use them. You can really, it makes a huge difference. You can still see those lips. Use those. You just, again, the courage to speak up to people and let them know how challenging this is during this time being masked. That you need other provision, writing, like Carol said, go back to the old way, start writing things down, but don't stop communicating. It's really important, especially with your family, to keep those connections. I know phone isn't always the easiest way for people with hearing loss, but if that works, Zoom. We've had this kind of meeting with my own family, with my own kids, just get together on Zoom. You've got to keep the connection that way.
I see, Carol, you would like to add to this. Please go ahead.
You know, it strikes me that there will always be people who don't get it. So you know what? Those people who don't get it, we don't need them in our lives as much as possible. And, you know, let's get over them. I found that sometimes I would have trouble, let's say, with a cashier, and she doesn't understand, you know, how to deal with me, no matter what I say about my hearing loss. But then there's a client that's leaving the store and that picks it up and helps me from a distance. And you know what? It just, humanity, there's still hope for humanity at the end of the day. But you know, the people that don't get it, don't let them get to us. Just leave that go, like water over a duck's back, and move on. And there are a lot of people, though, that do get it. So let's show our appreciation for them.
And I think we need to celebrate those who do get it. I had the experience with my local library where in my first encounter, I wasn't able to hear the clerk, and I asked her then to write down what she was saying. But she just thought if she spoke louder, I would understand her, but she was wearing a mask and I couldn't. And I went back a week later, and I identified myself, this time actually as having a hearing loss at the very outset. So she halted everything. She said, just wait. And she went to the back room, and that took 5 minutes. And she came out with this machine, which was a sort of an FM system. And it was fantastic because I was able to hear her and she could hear me. And then the next time that I went to the library, I had the same person I had at the very beginning, but I told her, let's use that machine first. And so we had the conversation with the machine. So this is the kind of tips that a mentor, in fact, might give those who are taking part in the program. And this is also the kind of advocacy work that CHHA is engaged in to be able to make things better. So it's both a matter of what can we do individually. Like in this scenario, individually, I needed to be upfront about my hearing loss, but also from a point of view of systemic change, the library or whatever institution, they need to get the equipment to make it accessible for us. And we in CHHA need to help them get that information because they don't automatically know this. And I'm sure everyone has had a similar type of experience of advocacy. Like Cindy, you've been advocating for the use of clear mask. And I have realized that if I'm asking other people to wear a clear mask, I need to do that myself. So we need to practice what we preach. But it's much easier to do if we can do it together as opposed to just doing it alone, which is the benefit of connecting with the mentoring program and with CHHA. So I'm just going to now quickly see if there's any other questions that we should be picking up on. We do have a question about, have any of the panelists faced discrimination because of hearing loss? Whoa, what a big question. Okay, I could start by saying I know I have. And the reason I know this is because I had a job interview where I had my FM system, and that raised all kinds of questions in the interviewer's mind about how well I was able to hear. And the reason why I knew it was discriminatory is that I was already working in that place and I knew the people. So they would have had plenty of opportunity to know about this issue. So it was never, and I didn't get that particular job I'd applied for. Maybe in hindsight, thankfully not, but still, and nobody was, it wasn't overt, it was subtle. Anybody else want to comment? Leon?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, thank you, Ruth. I mentioned earlier about I faced discrimination, you know, when I found out I lost my teaching career and I was looking for other work. Back in those days, that was like 87. It was still quite, when you applied for a job, it was still customary to get a letter in response, you know, saying thanks but no thanks, or yeah, we'll give you an interview or whatever. But it was still part of the process, which doesn't exist anymore. But what happened was I had sent out something like, oh, I don't know, maybe 50 letters, you know, applications for different things. And I got one response. And so my employment counselor said to me, don't mention the fact, well, I should say I mentioned that I had hearing loss in my letter. I was trying to be upfront about it. And I said, you know, I wear hearing aids, but I can hear fine with hearing aids. But I got one letter. And so my employment counselor said to me, don't mention your hearing loss in your next round of applications. And at that point I had, you know, I had two bachelor's degrees, had a master's degree and, you know, work experience. And, you know, so I was very well qualified. So anyway, what was really interesting, so the next round I sent out 7 applications. Guess what? I had 4, I never mentioned my hearing loss. I had 4 job interviews. So was I discriminated against? So, but like I said, that was that whole process was certainly a real eye opener for me.
Karen?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about when I'm a lawyer, and when I was looking for an articling job, I'm a young person out of law school, and the first few jobs I would apply, I would tell them I'm hard of hearing, because when you're hard of hearing and a lawyer, it can have an impact, right? Well, absolutely no interviews anywhere, and I went to like 20 law offices. I even had one interview on the phone where they just hung up on me the moment they found out about my hearing loss. So I stopped talking about it and I got a job right away. And then I went on to a career of 10 years in private practice and 27 in federal public service as a lawyer. And I did well. So, sometimes it's of course, we're talking about 30 years ago, but nevertheless, I suspect the situation is still very much the same today.
Yeah.
And the next step in all of these of the stories that we've heard is that when you get to the job interview, that's when you will disclose your hearing loss, because you don't want to carry on through a job trying to hide your hearing loss. It will zap every ounce of energy you have. But you say, "Hi, thank you for having me to interview me today. I want to let you know I have hearing loss, but if you face me, I face you. And if you move your lips better than you're doing right at the moment, then we'll all get along well." You say, "Yes, that was facetious. In my past jobs, I've done well with my hearing loss because of this, that, and the other. And if you hire me, it is not going to be an issue because we're going to do this, that, and the other." You're going to disclose and show how you're hiring me because of the skills that I bring, and you're going to accommodate my needs, and we're all going to be very successful.
At the end of the day, you don't really want to work someplace where they don't appreciate you, right? So their loss.
Yes. Unfortunately, these are still issues that young people are struggling with. And I just want to mention that we actually do have a much younger, sorry, folks, for saying that, a much younger mentor. And she wasn't able to join us. Jessica Nemola is our other mentor from British Columbia. She is an audiologist, and she's very active in CHHA, and she is also officially a young person, like under 35 years of age. So you do have, if you're interested in having someone who is a mentor who's younger, we have a person in that age group. And we will, of course, as we get greater demand for mentors, we will increase the cadre of mentors because we don't want to overwhelm the 5 people we have currently as mentors. We are now shifting to close this session, but in closing, I just want to make a couple of other remarks. One is that we're coming out with a very special Listen edition, and it will be beautiful. See the cover? And this will come out in a few weeks. Gordana can tell us more about that. And the other thing is that I want to just make a note that we have moved the program from BC to CHHA National. We're very much still committed to the program in British Columbia and promoting the national program. And this program at the national level would not be possible without the tremendous work that Gordana has put into it. So I want to acknowledge her work. I am, there in the background assisting because of my longtime involvement with CHHA BC, and very happy to do so. It's been a great pleasure working with CHHA National. And this is a great example where we can start a pilot program in a particular jurisdiction, and then we can allow it to spread nationally through CHHA National. So we're kind of one big happy family when it comes to the sharing of information and resources. And the other thing I would say is that every person that we approached, or at least I approached, was agreeable to being a mentor. So thank you so much to the mentors for so willingly taking out of their time to do this. They do not get paid. They are all volunteers, and they're doing it because they truly do have a great commitment to helping people with hearing loss, and committed to working with individuals at an individual level. They do so much in their organization, and then they do even more than that that we never know about. So really, thank you to all of you for that extraordinary work that you're putting forth for being mentors. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Gordana for last words. And you need to unmute yourself too.
And I thought I did it. Thank you, Ruth, for the acknowledgement. And I echo your responses too with all our mentors. And this is volunteer. Anyone that is seeking out to have a mentor, you have some incredible experts on this panel that can help you tremendously. I just listened to this webinar, listened to all the comments made today. I've learned something new too. And as far as your expertise and your own experience brings so much more to light. And that this is what this program is all about. And this is a year-long program. We do want to continue it. That would be the goal from CHHA National. We're so happy that we were able to launch this, and we'll continue to put our efforts to make sure that everyone across Canada does have access. I do want to build upon more expertise and more mentors. There's fabulous as this group here. And as Ruth showed, the magazine will be out in about a couple of weeks for sure. It's at the printers right now, so hot off the presses. And I'm sure everyone's going to enjoy all the articles in there. Some great insight as well. So thank you for all your support on that. Once again, this webinar will be posted on our CHHA website. We have a fabulous page that's dedicated to all our webinars. And this is going to be a highlight, especially today. It's just been phenomenal. Like I've said, it's been great of all the insight that everyone's done. So if you do have any questions or want to learn more about the program, we do have the mentorship program on our website. I encourage you all, if you know someone or you are someone that does need that support, please do not hesitate and reach out to us. We would love to hear from you and provide you the support that you needed. And if you're not a member or you're a CHHA member, please become one. If you are not a member, you still have access to our mentorship program. We want to make sure it's open to everyone. So huge thank you to all. Even though our technical support was a little bit tricky in the beginning, we managed it all. And I appreciate everyone so much. Adam in the background, who's managed this as well, and to our captionists as well. Thank you all and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you all.